Hi, you're listening to Defend Your Time. I'm your host, Chris Taylor. Defend Your Time is the podcast where we help you get stronger security, more value, and fewer headaches out of your Microsoft security investment. And today I'm joined by Asael Baez. Asael currently manages cybersecurity for a mid-sized North American manufacturer. And Asael, you and your team rely on the Microsoft Defender control plane. Today, we're going to talk about Asael's journey to maturing his team's security posture. And Asael is going to break down high impact steps that you can take to mature your security posture in the next 60 days. I love this. You can take some of these learnings and implement them quickly. Asael, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate the opportunity.
Now, you talked to us a little bit about your journey, your role, where you currently are.
Yeah, I've been with this company actually about 2.5 years, but as far as cybersecurity, it's been about 10 years now. And I actually started in networking. I think it's imperative for cybersecurity professionals to have a clear understanding of the networking protocols and how things connect to each other. That's definitely a key to understand how attackers will try to get into a network for sure.
Talk to us a little bit about your security program. Obviously, you and your team, you're relying on Microsoft Defender. What are some of the core components of how you think about your security program today?
Yeah, so what I would suggest, there is a tool that CISA has provided, and it's called CSET, so CSET. And it's a tool that you could download, and then from there, you are able to, depending on your company, you're able to say, okay, I want to do a security assessment, for example, like NIST 853 for the framework. And then it's going to ask you quite a few questions, and then you could answer them. Then you could identify gaps from there. And based on that, make the decisions or make the line items, action items that you want to take to mitigate those. So I think that's a great starting point. It's a self assessment tool that anyone could download. And honestly, there are some companies that charge thousands of dollars to do the same thing. So,
That's a great point. So start with the CSAT tool, identify where you are in your own maturity before you get started, where you might have gaps. Let's talk about some of your favorite items or your list of 10 recommendations.
yeah,
Where would you start?
yeah. So, these things are, I would say, very low hanging fruit that will have a big impact on the way that to prevent threats and to prevent breaches. I like to start with something that as simple as getting your alerts, critical alerts if the device is compromised, if an account is compromised, that not only you get an email, but also you get a text about that. And depending on the alert, you could filter them to also go to your teams if you're using Microsoft to go to your team's channel and then alert other people as well. That's something that sometimes we get a lot of alert fatigue,
Mhm.
and minimizing those alerts and prioritizing the real threats, it's key. And not only then once you get the alerts, you want to first declare and make sure that you don't get any alerts that you shouldn't. So you want to suppress any alerts, and I'm pretty sure that on Tineo it helps on that. So if you're getting alerts, you could suppress them, and then you want to only get the alerts that you got to take action on. I think that's key. That way, when you get an alert, you don't become immune to them, but you are also taking action once it comes in, and you know that could be a threat.
So get those alerts set up. And I'm sure it's an ongoing journey to continue to refine. So you're getting alerted when you need to be, but you're not being inundated with false positives or true positives or
Right.
uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So I would say when I used to work at the stock, we would get quite a few alerts, and some customers also had, oh, I want to receive everything. And you don't want that. You want to receive the alerts that need to take action on. Then there's some other alerts that you may want to send to a different channel within Teams just for logging or reviewing. But if you want to get an alert um, that it's a critical, very likely that something wrong is going on, then you want to get it on your phone and start making the actions that you need to make sure that you address that promptly.
Okay. So it's not just about setting up the alerts, but making sure they're going to the right channel. So if you can get them going to Teams, going to your phone, and specifically the alerts that you need to take action on versus those that you're just logging for posterity.
Exactly. And then the second one would be also leveraging again Teams or Slack, whatever you're using, to make sure that if someone reports a phishing email, that action is taken within a few minutes. Because as we know, phishing emails are the most common way that an attacker would try to get access to. So instead of reviewing them in hours after, you could also set up alerts that when someone reports a phishing email, to go also to a channel, and then it will alert you, and then you could just go there and check out that email, find out what's going on, what are the threats. I could mention many samples when threat actors would send emails to us, and then we see a pattern, and then from there we could take action, even notify the users, be on the lookout for these type of things.
Like obviously, timeliness is key, depending on the type of alert and what's actually taking place.
So you hit it in the nail. Sometimes we have to be proactive. And if we get an alert, we want to have things in place already to start mitigating those alerts. We don't want to wait and then take action. We want to take action. So when something comes, we already know what we need to do.
Okay, so what do you do next? What's your next piece of advice?
Yeah, so I would say, again, these are things that are very common depending on the company that you're working for. If it's a company just located in one country and they don't do any businesses with any other countries, if it's a global company, maybe it's a little bit different. You have to adjust accordingly. But if it's a company based on the US or another country, you want to block any emails that may be coming from other countries, especially China, Russia, and many other countries that we know that most of the time they will try to attack us from there. So if there is not a need to have that country open to us to send emails to us, then we should block it. Another thing that you could do is also you could create alerts within your Windows Microsoft console to say if a email comes from this country, alert me and do not deliver it. That way, do not deliver it. That way, when let's say if a country is sending so many emails, then we know that we are being targeted by that country. So recently we had that alert set up a few months ago, and we saw that there was a domain attacking us and sending us emails, but all those emails didn't make it to any of the inboxes because we had that alert already. But we were able to find out the IP, what were they trying to do. That way we could train the users what to look for if they try to send that from another country that is in our allowed list. We do have an allowed list, the countries that most of our employees will go to or will do some type of work, but then the rest of the world is pretty much blocked because there is no need for us to be receiving emails from somewhere in the middle of the other side of the country or the planet, I would say.
And what you use to administer that allow list and block certain countries, is that your email servers or a specific tool you use?
Yeah, no, it's actually right there in Microsoft emails or in the Microsoft Security Console. You could set up those alerts and I could send you that documentation, but it's very simple, or you could just pretty much co-pilot it and it should tell you, but it's very simple to do, honestly.
Okay, this is great. I feel like we're on our way to a good journey here. We've set up the alerts, we've triaged the alerts appropriately. We're blocking emails from known countries where we really don't have any expectation of doing legitimate business, where we think there might be attacks coming. Feels like we're off to the start. Where do you go from here?
Yeah, another great tool or feature, it's to set up impersonation protection, meaning there are some threat actors that will try to impersonate high-level employees like the C-suite, and there's a feature that you could enable also Microsoft to prevent those type of things. So it will pretty much not allow those type of emails. Let's say if I am the CEO and then I want to, or I'm an attacker and I want to impersonate the CEO, I will use like a Gmail account with the name of the CEO. So Microsoft will detect that and will prevent that email from being sent to the inboxes, which is a great feature. And again, that's also available within Microsoft. And we do see quite a few of those emails trying to get through, but thankfully they don't.
Interesting. So this is something you can do through Microsoft Defender for Office 365. Is it a feature you have to enable or turn on? Is it, how do you actually activate it?
Yeah, I would have to have the console in front of me, but it's a feature, yes, within Microsoft
Yeah.
Defender.
Okay.
And I could provide, but I'm pretty sure if somebody where they use ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot, that'll be very easy to set up. Hmm.
Great. Okay. Yeah, it's interesting. I think I've gotten text messages, emails before from people pretending to be either the CEO or the CRO, uh,
Hmm.
asking you to discreetly purchase some gift cards.
Yeah. And also, talking about the C-level suite, there's also another feature I believe is called priority protection.
Okay.
And basically, this one it's also very simple to enable. You could take most of your high-level executives, and I also would say those emails that are constantly being targeted by phishing attempts. And then you could put them into that group, and those emails will be protected because there's more AI tools, machine learning for those emails that you put in that group. And then it protects them from getting phishing attempts or emails that shouldn't come in, such as spams and things of that nature. So we have a group also that protects those individuals that are in that group. And I would say that again, it's machine learning, so it's not perfect, but it's doing its work. So there's some emails that may not be able to make it to their inbox that should, but at the same time, you could release those very easily, but the rest of the accounts are also protected. But there's some wiggle room and some, I would say, improvement that Microsoft needs to continue to do there.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think about targeted spear phishing means where those high priority accounts are those are going to be the ones that are going to be targeted much more sophisticated way, not just opportunistically. So
Yeah, the
actually
whales, the whalings, how they call them, absolutely.
nice. Okay. So we've gotten the baseline with making sure the alerting is set up. It's triaged in such a way that we're maybe reducing the noise. You've got the right kind of protections in place, blocking emails from certain countries. Now you're doing a little bit more to protect identity-based attacks, making sure you have Defender for Office, protecting against impersonation. And you're thinking about some of these high value identities within your organization and ensuring you have some additional protections there. Where do you go from here? What's next?
Yeah, I this is something that I know many companies talk about, and it's cybersecurity awareness. But it the way I think of it, let's say if a new employee comes in thinking that individual needs to be patched, and the way that I say is he needs to be taught how to identify a phishing email.
Mhm.
Because again, phishing emails being the most common way that breaches happen since they are onboarded, and then we take actions to make sure that they get trained on day one on orientation so they could understand phishing simulations and attacks. And then from there, then you would send phishing simulations every so often, depending on your company and what you think is best. But once you send a phishing simulation, you have to follow through. Let's say if you have 100 employees and you send a phishing simulation and five of them fail, don't just provide, okay, yeah, they failed. You have to follow through so those five know how to identify a phishing email. Once they have once they have been trained, then to those five, you want to send them another phishing email different from the first one that you sent, and to make sure that they have a clear understanding of what to look for. And if they don't, out of those five, maybe two fail again, then you take another training with them, and don't just send them in training, meet with them, engage if you can, because it only takes one click and they could start downloading malware, and then we'll have to then pretty much start working overnight. And that is just not fun.
Yeah, there's a reason I think why most attacks are done through phishing. And I know an organization I worked at used to show the leaderboards for by department in terms of how people
Nice.
phishing simulations. I remember talking to one of my teammates. He was distracted having a conversation, and he just inadvertently clicked on one of these test emails, and he knew the second he did it too. He threw his hands up in the air. But it's you can train people, but you're still subjected to human error is always
Yeah.
part of it.
And let's think about this. We spend millions of dollars in security tools sometimes, but the weakest link is the user. So we
Yeah.
have to shift or make it good balance in training our users to identify phishing emails and not just try to continue to prevent investing in tools. We have to invest in tools to train them on how to identify that. That's definitely a key component.
Okay, great. So let's say we're making progress, we're educating our employees, and we feel like we're raising cybersecurity awareness across the company. Where do you go from here?
Yeah, so I would say another thing too is to have a vulnerability patch management program. One of the best ways that I have been able to make a lot of progress is to identify the vulnerabilities within our environment, whether it be you using an external scanner such as Nessus or Rapid7 or whatever you're using, or even Microsoft providing you the weaknesses within your environment. So you want to from there prioritize, are there any criticals in my environment? Are there any criticals that are being exploited? And then based on that, meet after, I would say, 2 weeks or maybe one after patching Tuesday to make sure that the patch has been applied and also to remediate any lingering devices that need to be addressed. And then proactively make sure that those devices that are lingering around, that they get patched and followed through to ensure that there are no open holes in your environment.
Yeah, this is a huge one. I know last year our Ontanu's advanced threat operations team published their report, and one of the findings was that over 50% of attacks were using vulnerabilities that
Yeah.
the,
Yeah.
the journey or the constant need to identify and update patches is one of the great challenges. of
Yeah.
cybersecurity
Yeah.
team.
And that's unfortunate because I was also reading a report quite a few months ago that it mentioned that most of the attacks, they did come by vulnerabilities that were exploited. And on top of that, those vulnerabilities could have been patched and they were not. So it's definitely imperative to be on top of those things. And even third-party tools, if you don't have to have them in your devices, they will become vulnerable at some point. So keeping track of those things, it's a lot of work, but at the end, it will definitely benefit the company and put the company in a better shape.
And this is obviously one of the ongoing challenges too, is that the abundance of tools means that you can't always have a reliable, predictable patching schedule. So
Mhm.
you almost have to make it something that's happening in real time and constantly scanning. Okay. This is great. Let's keep going. I've counted maybe 6 so far of these steps. What else would you implement as
Um,
the new security leader?
yeah, I do have a couple more. I'd probably mention a couple in between,
Sure.
twinkling in the middle, but no worries. So basically, nowadays it's imperative to have someone looking at your environment 24/7. And I guess that's when you guys come in, when you have a partnership with you guys, continue that you guys are pretty much 24 hours looking. So I could definitely go to sleep and know that if something happens, you guys were going to address it. I do remember last year we were doing a penetration test and I didn't tell you anything. And we had a device that they were trying to penetrate to and just raise a bunch of alerts here and there. And I do recall that you guys took action on our behalf and isolated the device. And that was something that I was like, oh, that's awesome. because if I wasn't around or the team wasn't around, then you guys would have taken the appropriate action, and that's what we're looking for. So definitely monitoring 24 hours. It's imperative. We should not have just 8 to 5, or it has to be 24 hours nowadays for sure.
I love that. And I appreciate you mentioning that. I'm glad we did right by you. I think 24/7 monitoring, obviously critical, especially because attackers are not waiting for business hours. In fact, they're probably prioritizing launching their attacks when they think that it's either weekends, holidays, or nights. And I think to your point, the finding a partner who's able to take action on your behalf. But
Yes.
I would add to that, having clearly established rules of engagement. One of Ontaio's real focus areas with our managed XDR customers is making sure we have established rules of engagement to know how to handle any kind of a scenario, who to reach, depending on asset type, location, all those different variables. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. And it's great because the other day, like I mentioned, we had a domain that was trying to send quite a few emails to different people. So it was very targeted to us. And I did reach out to you guys and said, "Hey, could you guys dig a little bit more into this? Want to get a more investigation?" And you guys even went into the dark web to find out more information and provided us with information that helped us to address some of the things here. So it's definitely good to have a partner that has our back for sure.
Good. I love to hear that. Thank you, Asael. Okay. I think you've taken us through a lot of these great steps. I think this is a fabulous discussion. Could get a security leader who's taking over the security program in a new role to have an impact quickly, or maybe somebody who's just trying to, refresh and make sure they're taking as many steps as they can to shore up defenses.
Yeah.
Anything else you would add?
Yeah, actually, I do have a few more things. One of the things too is we should, for sure, shift from investigating and then isolating. I think if we have a device that has a very high or critical alert, I would suggest and submit to the community to isolate and then investigate, because I have unfortunately been part of data breaches before. And if we would have taken these actions in this order, we will have averted the thing. So I would say and there is some automation again that we could set up within Sentinel if they use Sentinel or many other SOAR tools. But within Microsoft, you could also set up automations and say, look, if a device is high or a device has a high alert or a high severity alert, then within a few seconds or within a few minutes, you could tell it isolate the device and then investigate from there. And you can still get the alerts in some of these things, but I think it's great to have that and talk to the business about this is a decision that we'd like to make and explain to them the benefits, because sometimes it's rather, even if it's a production server, it's better to have that isolated because it's very unlikely, and that's why we have to fine tune our alerts. But it's very unlikely that a production server is going to get a very high critical alert if it's something not going wrong. So that's why first we have to address that, suppressing any alerts, any noise. But then once that has been fine tuned, take that approach of isolate and then investigate. So I think that's key and has helped us here tremendously as well.
That's a really great point. So reversing the sort of mentality from investigate and then isolate. Isolate first, especially if it's a high severity alert asset, and then leverage automation where possible. So good.
Absolutely.
There.
Yeah. I think the automation, it's a must because sometimes we're going to try to investigate, but I've seen that if we isolate, even if the business doesn't understand at the beginning, they will. Even sometimes we had devices, people clicking on emails that they shouldn't have. And that computer, that laptop got isolated because they clicked on a malicious link. Now, so for the user, they were without internet for a while. And that it's also a teaching point. They understand. And if they click on something and we don't isolate that device automatically, most likely we're not going to follow through and it's not going to have the same effect. So for us, again, it's a culture shift within the company that I wish we will get there to minimize these type of threats like that. And the last things that I want to mention is be ready, be proactive for an event. That means if you're going to travel I'm sorry, but if you're going to travel and you work in IT security, you have to take your laptop with you unless you have somebody else covering you. But if you're going to travel, take your laptop, take your phone, your tablet, whatever, and make sure that you have internet access. You want to be ready to be available to ensure that you protect your company. And again, this depends on the culture of your company and how large is your team. But you want to be ready. You don't want to be in the middle of the woods saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, I don't have my laptop with me," or something like that. And again, I know some people like, I need to balance work, which is true. But at the same time, I'd rather be ready and prevent something that being called at 3 o'clock in the morning to resolve something that could have been prevented.
You're going to enjoy that ski trip a lot more if you that if you get into a call.
Oh boy, absolutely. Yes, that is very true. And then you look like a hero. Hey, we prevented something. It's awesome. Yeah. So I think that's all I had. But yeah.
Okay, so Asael, so you've taken all these steps. I'm feeling much more secure now. I've got now I can relax. Now I've got some time to do some of my own personal hobbies. What do you like to do when you're not defending?
Yeah, so and this is one of the things too. So I actually like to fly airplanes. It's a very specific hobby, but I like to fly every so often. And I live here in PA and I do have family in Massachusetts. So I visit them every so often. Usually take me about 2 hours flying, but if I have gone by car, it's usually about 5.5 hours. So I do save some time doing that and gives me a good excuse to fly.
I love it. And just like pilots have their checklist that they go through every time they take off, you've got your checklist of items that security teams should be making sure they're looking at regularly.
Yeah, and actually, when I do fly, I tell the rest of the team, "Hey, I am not going to be available because there is not internet up there for me."
Right.
And that's when you guys come in for sure.
Yeah. Good. Asael, thank you so much for the time today. That's our discussion for today. This is a great topic. I think that every security leader, no matter how mature your organization is worth going back and refreshing and looking at some of the fundamentals. So again, thank you for listening. Thank you, Asael, for your time. A really great discussion today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And people could find me on LinkedIn. I'm willing to provide you whatever advice you guys may need. Not that I know it all, but I've been around for a while. So,
Outstanding. All right. Thank you very much.
all right, take care.
Okay, big thanks to Asael Baez for joining us, and thanks to you for listening. This is Defend Your Time, brought to you by Ontinu, and I'm your host, Chris Taylor. This is the podcast where we try to help you get stronger security, more value, and fewer headaches out of your Microsoft security investments. If you haven't already, please subscribe, leave a review, and let us know what you think. Thanks again.